Welcome to lecture series in Advanced Geotechnical Engineering course. So, in this lecture we are commencing with module 7, lecture 1 on geotechnical physical modeling. Nowadays, with an increase in the infrastructure development, there is a dire need for understanding about behavior of the geotechnical structures before collapse or before failure and at failure. This will enhance to understand the response of these structures before failure and at failure. This module is divided with the following contents: physical modeling methods, and especially a technique which we are going to expose ourselves is called centrifuge based physical modeling and its relevance to geotechnical engineering with a number of examples. And we will try to see application of this technique for static and dynamic problems with numerous examples. So, in this module we are going to discuss about what are the different modeling techniques and narrowing down to physical modeling methods and application of this centrifuge modeling and its relevance to geotechnical engineering. We will try to bring out that, and then with number of examples and its applications we will actually try to see the centrifuge modeling of geotechnical structures. The basic intention of this module to cover the scaling laws or what we call scaling relationships and modeling considerations for physical modeling in geotechnical engineering, both for static and dynamic conditions with examples. As I mentioned earlier, geotechnical physical modeling has become a powerful and versatile tool for studying geotechnical problems. A wide number of applications can be studied by using this technique. This helps to gain insight into the behavior of geotechnical structures. So, coming to the word which is there in geotechnical centrifuge modeling or geotechnical physical modeling, what we said is that modeling. The modeling, if you look into the definition, it can be defined as a representation of some aspect of real behavior. So, it can be a real structure and a situation or a problem that is soil or foundation by a more abstract system. If you are able to do that, for example, you consider an embankment resting on a soil, then all aspects of the embankment need to be modeled and then represented. Similarly, a foundation like a shallow foundation subjected to vertical load, horizontal load, nowadays people are understanding about the subjected to torsional loads to the shallow foundations, and similarly let us consider a pile foundation subjected to vertical load, horizontal load and a torque load. These things can represented in an abstract system. So, modeling can be defined as representation of some aspect of real behavior, a situation or a problem by a more abstract system. So, in modeling it is essential to recognize three fundamentals. One is that we need to see all significant influences should be modeled in similarity. That means, first of all, we say that material to be modeled, and configuration, let us say an embankment, a slope of an embankment and height of the embankment and its bedding conditions need to be simulated. Similarly, all the effects not modeled in similarity should be proven by experimental evidence. So, any parameter which is not modeled in similarity should be proven by experimental evidence, and any unknown effect should be revealed or proven insignificant by means of test results. That means that experimental verification will help us to ensure that any unknown effect should be revealed or proven insignificant by means of test results. Suppose if we are not able to achieve a similarity between because of in virtue of certain parameter, and we have to see that this is proven insignificant by means of experimental test results. Further, a model can approximate simplification of reality. So the skill in modeling is to spot the approximate level of simplification, to recognize those features which are important and those features which are unimportant. So what we need to know in modeling is that the skill in modeling is to spot the approximate level of simplification and to recognize a parameter, those features which are important and not important, and this can lead to more understanding of the behavior of a structure being modeled. So it is often necessary basically for the sophisticated design and analysis procedures, as in the way of is the only way for the geotechnical engineers can analyze a complex physical system at a fraction of cost of physical or any other type of modeling. So modeling is often necessary in the present sophisticated design because of the complexity which is involved by modeling, by involving with number of parameters, and this can be done at a fraction of cost of physical or any other type of modeling. So what are the steps involved in modeling? First of all, selection of problem or system of interest, and postulate the principal characteristics of the problem or system in the second step. In the third step, apply principles of mechanics like for soils stress strain criterion, effective stress principle, Darcy's law, continuity equation, compatibility condition, stress history, etc., to deduce the response of the model. So in the third step, we will apply the principle of mechanics for for soils stress strain relationship and or stress strain criterion and effective stress principle, Darcy's law, continuity equation, compatibility condition, stress history, etc. Basically this is done to reduce the response of the model. Further, comparisons of the predictions with measured values from the carefully conducted in situ or laboratory tests. So comparisons of the predictions with measured values from carefully conducted in situ or laboratory results. So in step 4, if the agreement is not proper, go to step 2 to re-examine the postulation and repeat the steps from 2 to 5. That means in step 5, if the agreement is not proper, whatever is predicted is not in comparison with observed results, then go to step 2, re-examine the postulation and repeat steps from 2 to 5. So having discussed the and defined modeling in modeling, and in geotechnical engineering, modeling word is not new. Modeling techniques in geotechnical engineering is a conventional approach where it is adopted traditionally. So we have different categories of modeling. We can say that empirical modeling, even today because of the complex nature of the soil, in many cases we adopt empirical models, and theoretical models, these are today, even today they are famous and we are using, and numerical models. With the advent of computers, the numerical modeling is gaining popularity and is also getting tuned with advanced techniques in modeling techniques, which we are going to discuss in this module. And traditionally we have analog models which are very popular. To state an example, the spring analogy model adopted by Terzaghi for explaining the effective stress equation stands as an example. And lastly, a physical model which is nothing but classified as 3 heads basically. One is full scale, this is at 1:1, and that means that a construction of a full scale structure, and if many situations or many places or many sites, the feasibility is a question, and controlled experimentation of a full scale model is next to impossible, next to possible. In such situation, then small scale model is one of the viable option, and this small scale model, in the sense the model reduced by n times. That means that all the the dimensions of a full scale model are reduced by n times, and this can be done at normal gravity, that is at 1 gravity, or at present please take it as that ng, that is called a centrifuge based physical model, which we are going to introduce in this modules. So the physical model is subclassified as full scale and small scale at normal gravity, a small scale at centrifuge model, or at high gravities. So why we need these small scale models at high gravities, in what cases these techniques are applicable, that we will be elucidating in this part of lectures on in this module. So empirical models, a long history of the empirical modeling in geotechnical engineering is there, and we have Wayne strength criterion. In the Wayne strength criterion, considering number of cases of embankment failures, Jerome in 1973 recommended a correction factor lambda for a Wayne shear strength measured in the field. With that, it has been found that with an increase in plasticity index of the soil, the correction factor lambda is going to decrease drastically. So that means that by applying this correction factor to the measured value, then we can actually get the strength value which can be adopted in the design. Based on that, this can be matched close to the field observations. So an empirical model was developed basically by considering the observations which are actually done during the Wayne strength test, particularly when the vane blade is rotating, the surrounding soil is subjected to some sort of disturbance, and that leads to to give the higher value of the vane strength or shear strength value. So in lieu of that, and this is actually predominant when with an increase in the plasticity index. So a correction factor has been recommended for this vane strength correction factor, or even today it is known as Zurum's correction factor for vane shear strength measured in the field. Similarly, we have for estimating consolidation settlement, and we have examples like CPT and settlement of footings on sand, and for interpreting pressure meter test results, pressure meter is a device wherein we can actually measure the in situ modulus of the soil by placing an inflated rubber membrane in the balloon. So depending upon the the intactness and softness or hardness of the walls of the borehole, the response of the test can be achieved. So here there is also some empiricism, and empirical models exist, they do exist, and we use in the practice of geotechnical engineering. Theoretical model, even today, like for example a classical example for theoretical model is for studying steady state seepage conditions. For Laplace equations is one possible theoretical model. So once a theoretical model has been formulated, there are two possibilities for its application. Either the boundary conditions of the problem can be massaged in such a way that exact analytical result can be obtained, or a numerical solution is required. So one of the examples which we can state is what steady state seepage conditions, and this is can be defined by Laplace equation. The steady flow of an incompressible fluid through a porous medium is governed by a familiar partial differential equation called dou square h by dou x square plus dou square h by dou y square plus dou square h by dou z square is equal to 0. So wherein this head is h is the head drop, and this is in 3-dimensional direction, and this is deduced based on the continuity equation, and if you have say only 2-dimensional condition, then the third term which is dou square h by dou z square is equal to 0. So in that case dou square h by dou x square plus dou square h by dou y square is equal to 0, that is for 2D seepage condition. If we are having, let us say only one dimensional flow, like in the constant head perimeter for example, wherein we can actually have dou square h by dou x square is equal to 0. So one dimensional flow wherein we have dou square h by dou x square is equal to 0. For two dimensional flow of an embankment, flow of an water through an embankment or earthen dam, which is dou square h by dou x square plus dou square h by dou y square is equal to 0. And for the three dimensional flow, an example is flow of water into the well, that is the three dimensional flow, and this approximate change in parameter also describes the flow of current as well as the flow of heat. So if you look into the analogous representation of these theories, we can say that this is used in study in flow of current as well as the flow of the heat, that is the electrical analogy as well as in the heat transfer. Coming to the next set of modeling which we have said is numerical modeling and numerical or constitutive modeling. Basically a numerical or a constitutive model is governed by the equations which ultimately describes the link between the changes in strain, that is delta epsilon, and delta sigma, that is in changes in the strain and changes in stress for any element of the soil because of the loading which they are subjected to. The complexity in numerical model increases with the requirement of defining several material parameters from laboratory and in situ tests. So what will happen is that the complexity and the efficiency of the numerical model increases, efficiency of the model becomes difficult with the requirement of defining several material properties from laboratory and in situ tests. Moreover, in a numerical model, if you are actually having several materials with interacting with each other, very difficult to define the stress strain relationship between those materials which are actually taking part in the behavior. So this particular technique, even though lot of progress actually has been made, many times actually this requires verification of the developed numerical solution. If this is done, if by using an appropriate technique, if this validation is done, yes, numerical modeling can be considered as one of the viable option for studying number of geotechnical problems. So numerical modeling is the subject of many basic and applied research efforts in civil engineering, and basically such efforts involve the use of finite difference or finite element and boundary element and or discrete elements in conjunction with sophisticated nonlinear elastic, elastoplastic or viscoplastic models. So what we are discussing is that this requires verifications of the developed numerical simulation. Once the numerical model is verified, then the confidence in using this model increases. So these efforts basically doing this numerical modeling involve the use of methods like finite difference method, finite element methods, boundary element method and discrete element methods in conjunction with sophisticated models like nonlinear elastic, elastoplastic and viscoplastic models. We have said that traditionally in geotechnical engineering these analog models are famous. The analog models, basically the analog model carries a resemblarity in which a law which model follows is analogous to the law which the real situation or problem follows. See, let us consider electrical analogy, flow of water. So this can be given with defined with two laws. One is in case of real situation, let us say that is Darcy's law, wherein we can actually define Q, that is discharge, is equal to K, that is the coefficient of permeability, and I, that is hydraulic gradient, and A, area of cross section. So area of cross section through which the flow is actually happening, where I is nothing but H by L. Similarly, in case of electrical analogy, when the flow of current, when we are actually considering, we have Ohm's law, where it defines between using the resistivity and a potential drop over a certain length and the cross section area of the conductor through which this electricity is passing. So there is this analog model resembles with a law which model follows is analogous to the law which a real situation or the problem follows. So this particular concept was extended to for explaining the Tarjagi's principle of effective stress, that is this spring analogy model. in the spring analogy model what has been considered is that we have in the real situation we have soil particles and occupied by the voids in between soil particles occupied by water, and when it is subjected to loading then what we have is that you have a situation that the skeleton, the soil skeleton as well as the water surrounding the voids as well as the surrounding the particles is subjected to loading. So this was actually represented by a spring analogy problem. So wherein what has been considered is that a cylinder of certain diameter was considered and it is actually having a piston arrangement at the top, and let us assume that it actually has got a valve which is actually possible to close or open. Then the piston which can move up and downwards, and let us assume that the bottom of the piston is attached with a spring having a certain stiffness K, and let us see that the spring actually represents the soil skeleton, and pore water is actually represented by water in the analogy model, spring analogy model also, and let us assume that the the piston is placed in position and the valve is actually closed and the load is placed, a load of P is applied on the piston. So then when the valve is closed, initially what will happen is that the entire load is actually borne by the spring. So that means that under undrained conditions also similar situation happens, similar phenomenon happens in real situation, wherein entire load is actually borne by the pore water. Then moment the valve is open, then there is a possibility for the spring to undergo compression. So in a way what will happen now is that the load is apportioned by the spring, which is nothing but a soil skeleton in the real situation, and pore water. So based on this, after certain amount of time what will happen is that the hydrostatic conditions will prevail, and in a process what will happen is that we can say that the total stress is equal to effective stress plus pore water pressure. So to explain this effective stress equation, sigma is equal to sigma dash plus UW, this spring analogy was used, and further the concept was actually extended for explaining the secondary consolidation. That means under a constant effective stress, when there is actually change in the void ratio which actually happens over a period of time because of the certain nature of soils like peat or marshy from the marshy lands, or we have the man-made material like municipal solid waste, it undergoes huge amounts of secondary consolidation. So this spring and dashpot analogy was actually used to represent these particular phenomenon of secondary consolidation or a creep of a soil. Before explaining that, let us try to look into extension of this spring analogy model. Previously we have said that for explaining the total stress is equal to effective stress plus pore water pressure, we actually have used a single spring, but in order to explain the consolidation behavior of a soil layer having two open or two sand layers at top and bottom, where they are actually having high permeability at the top, and let us assume that this is the water table at which the saturation below the soil is completely saturated, and it is subjected to say certain increase in the load, say delta sigma. So this situation is actually can be modeled analogous in an analogous way by using spring analogy model. So here what we have done is that we have taken a long cylinder, and the cylinder is assumed to be filled with water and has got top and bottom two walls, and the diameter of the walls represent the the permeability of the soil. If it is large permeability, the diameter is high, and if it is small permeability, the diameter is small, and this is a piston which is movable, and at each compartment it is divided into, here it is shown as 5 compartments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and between each compartments there is a spring of stiffness K is attached, and another spring of K is attached here, another spring of K is attached here, and 4th spring and 5th spring, and all these compartments are interconnected. So that means that water can flow in its freely. Now what will happen is that initially when we actually apply delta sigma, so we have a situation that if delta sigma is applied, then the pore water pressure which is within the soil is nothing but delta U, which is what we can say is the first isochrone which actually gets developed. And over a period of time, let us say at time t is equal to 0, and when time t is equal to 0, when the load is applied, then we can say that the first isochrone is nothing but delta U, it shifts by equivalent to delta sigma. Then over just let us say that when time t1, where t1 is actually greater than t, then what will happen is that because of the pervious nature of these two layers, open layers here, sand and at top and bottom, that what will happen is that the water transfers the stress directly to the soil, and the pore water pressure drops to 0. That means that at this particular point, the next level, the isochrone comes towards the origin, the center, from where the pore water pressure increased to delta U or delta is equal to delta sigma. So at both top and bottom, it actually gets to reduce to 0. Then correspondingly, what will happen still at the midpoint, there will be high amount of pressure, pore water pressure had to be dissipated or transferred to the transferred to the soil skeleton. So here what happens is that over a period of time, what will happen, the tendency of the isochrone to flow towards the initial condition tends to prevail. That is, the initial condition is nothing but the original hydrostatic condition before the application of the load. So here the similar situation can be simulated with the, if we are able to say open these valves simultaneously, both upper valve and bottom valve, then in line with what actually happened with two open layers which we consider in the left hand side of this figure, we have the spring 1 and 5 will get compressed first, then spring 2 and 4 will get compressed first, and finally the third spring will start compressing slowly. So this process continues till the hydrostatic conditions prevail in the situation. So here with this what we can actually explain is that the consolidation phenomenon of a soil having a thickness h, clay layer having thickness h, can be represented by a spring analogy model with multiple springs attached in the fashion which is actually shown in the figure. And as we have said that this analogy model was actually applied to to secondary consolidation or the creep of a soil also, and two models which are can be discussed are that Gibson and Lowe 1961 and Barden 1965. So here this modeled by modifying the soil skeleton response with the time. So the soil skeleton, particularly what will happen is that under the application of a constant effective stress, because of the breakage of the soil particles or bending and breakage of the soil particles, this phenomenon actually happens. So here this is represented by Gibson and Lowe in 1961 by a linear spring between linear spring A1 here and the linear spring B1 and linear dashpot delta 1, and so this is actually represented, and further this was actually modified by Barden in 1965 by replacing this linear spring and by putting a linear spring here, and here what actually has been modified is that instead of linear dashpot, a non-linear dashpot has been used to go close to the the creep or a secondary consolidation phenomenon in the real situation. So in this way the analog models were traditionally applied, and particularly to understand about the electrical analogy and the spring analogy, they are famous in as far as geotechnical engineering is concerned. Coming to the fourth type of the last type of modeling which we have discussed is nothing but physical models. These physical models are basically performed in order to study the particular aspects of the behavior of the prototypes, and these physical models help to postulate or portray the failure mechanisms and to understand about the behavior of a prototype before failure and at failure. And full scale testing is in a way example of physical modeling where all features of the prototype or full scale structure in field being studied and are reproduced at full scale 1:1. That means that all aspects are actually represented, and that means that you have real soil, real ground condition and real ground motion and real loading. And when you have this situation, then full scale testing is in a way of example of physical modeling where all features of the prototype or full scale structure in field being studied or reproduced at full scale. This full scale testing is also quite common in geotechnical engineering practice. Like example, like a plate load test which is actually conducted to estimate the bearing capacity. That means that from through a field plate load test we can actually carry out in the plate load test can be carried out at the site to get the bearing capacity. Similarly, in order to get the axial load capacity or lateral load capacity, there is a mandatory requirement of testing of piles which are actually being used in a project for we actually do the two categories of pile load testing. One is to test up to the failure, the other is to test only up to certain times of design load, so that these piles can be used in the structure. So the one which is actually applied beyond the design load is generally done initially as a test where the piles can be abandoned. So these full scale testing is in a way example of physical modeling where all features of prototype or full scale structure in the field being studied are reproduced at a at a full scale. Usually the full scale models or full scale or full prototype which is at 1:1 scale is usually associated with performance of testing of complete geotechnical systems and can be used for real geotechnical materials. So the need of theoretical model of their behavior disappears, and because as we are using the real geotechnical materials, the need of theoretical modeling of these materials disappears, and provide data for validation of analytical modeling approaches, and can thus provide a basis for extrapolation of physical model to the geotechnical prototype. So with that there is a possibility that providing data for validation of analytical numerical modeling and approaches which we have discussed earlier, and can thus provide a basis for extrapolation of the physical model to the geotechnical prototype. And another added advantage is that instrumentation and monitoring geotechnical prototype can itself is a physical model serving this validation purpose. So by instrumenting the physical model and monitoring the geotechnical prototype itself be a physical model serving this validation purpose. So full scale testing is usually performed to evaluate the geotechnical process which it is believed may be so dependent on the details of actual soil fabric that is imperative to use real soils. So for example, in some type of problems like embankment construction on soft soil, wherein in order to monitor the the degree of ground improvement, for example for a preloading of a soil, to do that you actually need to do the construct the embankment in let us say if the embankment is of 7.5 meters height above the soft soil, and it has to be done in 3 stages, let us say, and then between each stage there should be a waiting period of certain period, let us say 2 months or 3 months, and with that in order to ascertain the time for increasing next stage and going for next stage and all, one need to do the instrumentation wherein you measure the settlements, you measure the water pressure or pore water pressure changes in the soil. Based on that above, we can actually decide about these things. So here the full scale testing is imperative with real soil fabric conditions, And similarly, when we are actually try to accelerate, we try to use the the drains like prepropagated vertical drains or sand drains. So in a way what will happen is that we wanted to know the influence of spacing of the drains and the installation effects on the performance and all. One need to monitor and these full scale testing. So full scale testing is usually performed to evaluate the geotechnical processes, which it is believed may be so dependent on the detail of actual soil fabric that is imperative to use use real soils. So we can put the advantages of the full scale modeling are working with real ground conditions and real soils and real loads and real stress levels and real stress histories. This is very important, particularly for when we are referring to soft clay history, whether it is normally consolidated soil or over consolidated soil. And so this these conditions are very very relevant, and that is the benefit of the doing a full scale model test. But we have number of types of structures, as well as all these types of structures are subjected to different types of loadings. So many times simulation of these structures to climatic forces like say rainfall or earthquake and all those things are very very difficult. So these simulation of construction of a structure and waiting for a certain destructive force to come is difficult and next to possible. So these are the in the right hand side here it has been whatever we have discussed in the previous slide as actually shown here, that is the trail embankments, wherein we evaluate the process of ground improvement. We tend to do the full scale testing or a full scale prototype behavior, and use of different types of drains and spacing, whether they are adequate or not, whether the functionality is okay or not, have to be checked by monitoring only. And disadvantages in the sense that smaller scale model leads to much more rapid results purely because of the smaller size. Smaller the size, the length required are small, physical dimensions are small, the amount of the requirement of material will be small. So the small scale model leads to much more rapid results purely because of smaller size. Construction of an embankment on soft soils and the stage construction, for example, if you look into it, may take years to complete. So that situation is not advantageous as far as full scale or physical model testing in geotechnical engineering. And the cost will increase with the scale of the modeling. That means that if you are having let us say 1:1 scale, it will be almost equivalent to the scale which is actually the the cost will be equivalent to that of in the field, and difficult to perform parametric study, and difficult to perform controlled full scale testing and many times with even with a lot of precautions, the instrumentation and monitoring is also difficult. But if we are able to achieve an appropriate instrumentation and monitoring, and if we are able to do it with in a controlled way, then full scale model testing, physical model testing is the number one option to validate the number of different new concepts as far as which can be lead in to study in the geotechnical engineering, or to understand about the behavior of geotechnical structures. But considering the difficulty of the performing parametric study, and also involving the construction of the cost aspects as well as the feasibility aspects, the small scale modeling turns out to be a preferable option. The small scale option in the sense that the model which is not tested at 1:1, which is nothing but a reduced by a dimension n, that is n is nothing but a scale factor by which the model is reduced. So if you look into the physical models at small scale, the key question concerned is with establishing the validity of the models. Whatever we have scaled down, and ensuring the secured route to the extrapolation from the model behavior to the behavior we could expect at full scale. So the question which is required to be established is the validity of the models and ensuring the secured route to extrapolation from the model behavior to the behavior we could actually expect at full scale. So when we actually test the model at full scale, we do not have these questions because we are actually doing it 1:1 with real soils, real ground conditions and real stress histories and real loads and all. But when we do this at scale which is different from a full scale, which is smaller than smaller by a factor n, the extrapolation from the model behavior is a very important aspect to be considered. So existence of the supporting theoretical models is thus even more important for interpretation of small scale physical models than for the full scale models. So existence of supporting theoretical models is thus more important for interpretation of small scale physical models than for full scale models. So physical models at small scale, if you look into the merits, you can say the greater advantage of small scale laboratory model is that we have full control over the all details of the model. That means that all aspects of the models under control, in the sense that homogeneity or some requirement of the small quantity of soil and drainage paths, if at all water is actually flowing, are short, so the test durations will be maybe short. Possibility exists in performing many tests, and performing with the parametric variation is possible. That means that parametric study is possible, and effect of varying key parameters can be considered. And another important aspect is that the smaller the scale, the cost will be low. So liberty in choosing the boundary and loading conditions of the model, this is another important aspect wherein we can actually have we get the liberty in choosing the boundary and loading conditions, and smaller quantities of soil and drainage paths will be short, so the test durations will be smart. And we can look into this, the size of the model is as advantages as well as the disadvantage. It is not that we reduce by by greater factor n and say that we have done a small scale models. Always it is important for us to see that the whatever the small scale model is done is relevant as far as the particular phenomenon is being tested, and see that these results represent the full scale response of a respective full scale structure. So the physical model plays a fundamental role in the development of geotechnical understanding, and it is performed basically to validate theoretical and empirical hypothesis, and also is done to validate see new phenomenon, or to perform understand the behavior of the prototypes. This is this is the fundamental role in developing the it plays a fundamental role in development of geotechnical understanding. And this physical model testing, as far as in the laboratory is concerned, this is we actually have two standard examples. One is Casagrande's liquid limit test, and the other one is triaxial compression test. So let us look into the Casagrande's cup test, in which what we do is that we put a make a soil pad in a cup which is actually having certain curvature, and it is placed on a a standard base, and it is subjected to, once that pad is actually formed, by using the Casagrande's tool, what we do is that we separate and make two equal slopes at a formed at a this pad which was actually formed at a defined water content, and then the tool is Casagrande's tool separates the two slopes at the toe by a distance 2 mm, and the height of this slope is about 8 mm, and what we actually do is that you give by giving a damping energy to the this particular two separated portions, we see that the water content at the blows, the number of blows at which these two separated slopes get close by about over a length of 13 mm, and we say that there, then we can say that that is that critical number of blows for that water content. So here what we are doing is that the slope height is 8 mm and the slope inclination is about 60.6 degrees also at both the sides, and this is subjected to certain sort of damping energy, and the indication of this slopes moving close, that means that internally there is a failure which actually happens, we can say that critical subsurface failure which actually mobilizes, makes the slopes to move closer at the toe, and then we can say that that is the point at which we take the number of blows required to see that this portion closed by about 13 mm. So this in this what we are doing is that literally this is a type of a physical model test which we are doing knowingly or unknowingly in order to arrive at the liquid limit of a given soil by Casagrande's cup test. And similar example is the triaxial compression test. What we do is that here, if you are having let us say a sample which is collected at a certain depth, and the sample before its collection is subjected to vertical stress and horizontal stress. At elastic equilibrium, the relationship between vertical stress and horizontal stress is say sigma h is equal to k sigma v. Basically for normally consolidated soils, where k which is the coefficient of earth pressure at rest will be equal to 0.5. So in that case sigma v is equal to sigma h is equal to 0.5 times sigma v, and moreover upon this when it is subjected to loading, that is the increase in loading what the sample at a particular level is subjected. So this is simulated in the triaxial compression test. In order to understand the strength parameters of soil, what we do is that here the sample is subjected to a shear by applying the increase in load, that is nothing but what we call. So this is simulated here, what you can see is that these confining stresses are simulated by using the water surrounding water placed in the triaxial cell, and the deviator load which is actually applied, that is nothing but the additional load, sigma 1 is equal to sigma 3 plus p by a. So sigma 1 minus sigma 3 is nothing but the deviator load is equal to p by a, which is applied basically to arrive at the deviator stress at the failure. So with that what we are getting is that the stress strain behavior of a soil, and so that we can actually get the stress strain response of a soil to the given loading. So this is what we can say is the first physical model test which done in the laboratory to simulate the field or real situation condition. So coming to if the physical models, what we have discussed is that the physical model can be done at 1:1 or 1:n. If the model is not constructed at 1:1 scale, that means that we need to have some idea about the way in which we should extrapolate the observations. That means that if the model is not constructed at 1:1, we need to understand about how these the model which is not tested at 1:1 but it is tested at 1:n, let us say reduced by n times, how this model actually corresponds to a model which is should be at 1:1. So the material behavior, particularly if you look into this, we have two categories. One is linear and homogeneous for the loads applied in the model. The other one is the non-linear if the geometrical structure possesses several materials which interact with each other. So in the second category what we see here, non-linear, and if the geometrical structure possesses several materials which will be interacting with each other. So in this case for example for this is that let us say that we have got a cable is placed between two supports, and let us say the cable is loaded at the center with let us say by load W. So here what we can say is that the span of the cable is say length L between two supports, and by loading the cable undergoes a deflection by H. So in this situation what will happen is that the cable deflects or sags by H in the center. So here if you wanted to get the relationship between P, which is the tension and weight of the cable, and then relationship between H, the central deflection, and the span can be obtained. So here details of model can be projectable to prototype stage, but here in this case basically P by W, which is nothing but the tension and weight of the cable, to the H by L. H by L is nothing but H is the deflection and L is the span. For example, if I wanted to project these results to something like P by W is function of H by L now, where we can actually get P1 by W1 and H1 by L1, P2 by W2 and H1 by L2, so H2 by L2. So in the ways what will happen is that we will be able to do and postulate from one model to other model easily without much botheration about the scale factors or scale issues. But if we are having a situation of non-linear, or if the geotechnical structure possesses several materials which interact with each other, then what we need to know is that we require an understanding about the dimension analysis and development of the scaling relationship, because particularly we have a number of phenomena in geotechnical engineering. Let us say that we have got self weight forces, these are nothing but these body forces. So we actually have two types of forces, one is called body forces and other one is the surface forces or contact forces. Basically body forces are examples for body forces are nothing but weight forces due to self weight of the soil, or seepage, when the water flows to the soil, the forces exerted by the flowing water onto the grains is nothing but a seepage forces. In the process of dissipation of energy this happens. So the seepage forces and self weight forces are regarded as body forces, and when we material interacting with each another material, then the contact forces are actually developed. So but when the body is subjected to forces, then it is subjected to stresses, and if the body is deformable body, then body undergoes a change in length, then it is subjected to strains, and because of this change in length can also undergo, or the strains can also be undergone by collapse of the particles or by breaking of the particles or crushing of the particles. So this particular emphasis what actually requires is that in understanding of this dimension analysis. So dimension analysis is a technique which is actually used traditionally in civil engineering and which can be applied to geotechnical engineering to understand about the the several relationship between parameters which are actually describing a particular phenomenon. That means that we will be having a certain main important variable, and then it is actually influenced by several variables which are called as independent variables. So relationship between dependent variable and independent variables can be obtained by dimension analysis, and from there the similitude or similarity theories can be applied to deduce the scaling relationships. This is one of the ways of deducing. Then we also have, by using the concept of the differential equations or equations governing the phenomenon, we can also deduce the scaling relationships.